Okay, remember how I said I would have an opening for you? We were talking about caffeine this morning. We all love caffeine. I know Brad loves caffeine. Here are a couple things you might not have known about caffeine. The idea that caffeine may slow cellular aging is actually plausible, and there's a growing body of evidence to support the mechanisms. Here's a breakdown of how this might work biologically. Caffeine reduces inflammation and oxidative stress. It inhibits pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF, A, and IL-6, and it acts as an antioxidant, reducing reactive oxygen species. So there's one. Caffeine enhances autophagy. I believe I'm saying that right. It's your cell's version of taking out the trash. Studies suggest caffeine can upregulate autophagy, especially in liver and brain cells. More efficient autophagy helps prevent buildup of cellular junk that leads to aging and diseases like Alzheimer's. Were you aware of those things? Oh, there's one more. Caffeine inhibits, I think we've talked about this before, mTOR pathway. What's the mTOR pathway again? Remind me.
The
Do you know?
mammalian target of rapamycin.
Yeah, so caffeine inhibits mTOR pathway, which is a nutrient sensing pathway. Caffeine has been shown to indirectly inhibit mTOR, mimicking the effects of caloric restriction. This can lead to increased cellular stress resistance and lifespan extension in some models, like yeast, worms, and mice. So, I don't know. There you go. So, just in case anybody needed more reason to ingest more coffee and caffeine and all that, there's a lot of
I mean, I think
positive
all
things
that's
about
way
caffeine.
too fancy and doesn't really matter because the only reason that caffeine makes you live longer is it gives you a will to live on the days you just don't want to go on.
I was just gonna say, just because
That's the
I was
reality.
actually gonna say, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say caffeine just makes you happier. So that is it just that you're happier and you live a happier life and you live
Like,
longer? I take that
imagine
caveat out of
living in a world where there was no coffee. Like, I don't really care for caffeine, but I do like coffee. Like, I'm not going to go have an energy drink. I'm not going to take caffeine pills, but I will have a lot of coffee.
If you were to if you were to try to quit cold turkey caffeine, do you think you'd get the dreaded caffeine headache? Like, is that actually a
Oh,
thing? I've never tried, but like,
every probably 6 months or so, I just like take a couple weeks off of drinking coffee,
hmm
and it's the
does it
first
happen to
like
you?
4 days is awful. Like the
Do you get
headaches are
you
terrible.
do get
It's
headaches?
so bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, that does not sound fun. I
Caffeine
don't want to do
the
that.
caffeine withdrawal headaches is a real thing.
Is this why every so often I see you chewing on those nicotine pouches instead because you're trying to substitute caffeine for nicotine? You got
Dude,
this big lump chew in there.
I have never tried a nicotine pouch. This is
I have
this is
not either.
interesting though. There's actually a lot of really interesting research about the benefits of like lower dose nicotine that's
Nicotine?
consumed
Yeah.
like in a
Mhm.
way that does not involve smoking. I just am so
Yes.
terrified to try it. One, because like I just don't want to feel sick, and two, I don't want to like it.
He probably would like it too, as like that's the
Yeah,
thing. Like scared to like, oh God, I don't now I love this thing and I gotta like try to stay off of it. I
yeah.
get it 100%.
There's so many things in my life that I have not tried because of the fear of enjoying it. Like, what happens if I like it? That's
I
not
know.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
could say that about a lot of things. All right. Well, we should probably get on with it because
Speaking
people
of substances and abusing them, let's talk about weekends. Was that your cold open transition that
I
you were
mean,
trying to go with?
kind of. We'll go with that. I don't, this is just such a. I do want to talk about this, and I'm glad we're going to. But I have such a, I don't know. I feel like my view is admittedly oversimplistic in terms of managing weekends, and so like the advice that I try to give people, it's logical and it makes sense, but it's as with a lot of things, it's not as easy as the suggestion. Like here's the surface level idea. Actually applying it is not as easy. And right, so that's why I thought, well, let's just do an episode on this. I'll tell people how I think they should, better manage their weekends and tips and strategies. But then we can really dive into the micro parts of that and break it down and like, okay, what does this mean? Because I think just to give you guys an idea and we'll get there, but my overall idea or like premise is that when you think about your Monday through Friday, for most people, it looks way different than your Saturday and Sunday. right? Because most people, you wake up, you get ready for work, you have breakfast, you go to work, you come back, you make dinner, you wind down, you get ready for the next day. And it's like, it's very regimented, right? And then the weekend comes and that structure is not there because now you're free as a bird. So, like, to my premise is going to be for this episode that one of the things that really helps is just putting structure into your weekends. The other part of this, and again, we'll get into this, is I just you under eat during the week, and therefore on the weekends you just can't help yourself anymore, and then you overeat. So there's that sort of restrict and then overeat cycle. But we'll get there. So that's what this episode is going to be about. And then ultimately, like I said, I hope people can take something away from it and actually apply it and do better on the weekends going forward. And that's what this episode is going to try to do. So the first place that we'll want to dive into, I think, is, I mean, those are my reasons why I think people often derail their progress on the weekends. What do you think? Or what do you want to share? What are your theories and reasons for why people have such a hard time?
Well, I think it's first important to just acknowledge the fact that, like, a couple things. One, 2 days a week represents almost 30% of your entire week. Like, that's a huge chunk
It
of
is.
what it is,
Mhm.
right? Like, imagine if you decided that 30% of your work week you just were not going to work. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that is a huge amount of just your entire life, right? Like, that's 30%. So if you don't have a strategy or a plan or an approach for 30% of your life, it's very difficult to actually make meaningful progress because you're basically taking, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. So you're cutting your ability to make progress by like half almost. Like, that's kind of basically what that ends up being.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, like, weekends are just a construct that we made up. Like, there's really no reason that Saturday is a different day than a Wednesday, with the exception of how you scheduled your life and your days. So, like, there's no necessary reason why they have to be different. Now, to say that, on the other side of that coin is, mentally we treat weekends very differently. And that's not a bad thing, right? That just is kind of the way it is. And if you think, you know, for a lot of us, the days off of our standard work week, whether it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever, they're as much of a, like, emotional recovery as they are a time off, right? It's like
Mhm.
you're decompressing, you're trying to, like, rally up for the next week. You're like you're mentally and emotionally recovering,
Mental, exactly. Yeah.
and having structure on those days sometimes initially feels like it's difficult to
More of
do,
that.
right? So
Right.
it doesn't feel great. And so I think it's, something to just think about is, as you're approaching your weekend, sometimes those things are necessary, right? Like the emotional recovery, the mental recovery that you need from, like, the stressful work week to connect with your family and do those things. And so it's more of just like finding a strategy that works for you. And we'll talk about a lot of these different options here. But for some people, it is like eat a little bit less during the week so you can eat more on the weekends. For some people, it's eat the same on the weekends as you do during the weekdays. And we'll talk about all those things. But probably the most important thing is just, like, have intention and a plan, right? It's sort of like, there's been periods of my life where, in terms of like the exercise piece, I would use my weekends as like my biggest training volume days because I didn't have meetings. I had more time. My body felt better because I could, like, wake up, I could eat, I could stretch, then I could go work out. And then there's been periods of my life where it's like I don't do any structured exercise on the weekends. Like, I may go hiking or paddle boarding or
Walk or something.
take
Sure.
right. So it's like it always ebbs and flows, but just like having intention and a strategy, whatever it is better than just being like 30% of my life I just whatever goes, right?
Do whatever.
That's
Right.
where people get
Yeah.
into trouble.
This is why I'm going to pick on myself again, but, like, it's probably a good thing that I don't coach anymore because my philosophy is, like, if you're if I know that for the next 2 or 3 months, I'm going to, my goal is to lean up and like lose weight and just, I will just say for those 2 to 3 months that, hey, on the weekends, I'm not going to go out to eat. I'm not going to indulge in that that takeout food that you're bringing home. If I go to a social occasion, I'm not going to have that beer. And that is just the way I approach it, because like I know it's temporary. I'm like, just for 2 to 3 months, I'm not going to do this. And when I commit myself to that, I'm very disciplined. But like I said, I know that's not as simple for everyone else. And so my advice of, well, just do it for 2 to 3 months. It's a temporary sacrifice. You just put stuff on hold and it'll be there when you're done, doesn't work for everybody. I obviously know that, but that's why I say a lot of these things are easier said than done. Like, I bet you, I mean, I'm going on a limb here, but like you personally, if you said, okay, I want to get, let's say you're, I don't know, 10 to 12% body fat right now. I don't know what you actually are, but let's just say you wanted to get to 8%. And you know that if you want to get to 8% body fat, you're going to need to be super disciplined for the next however long. Would your approach be, okay, honey, we're not going to, like, I'm not going to eat out. We're not going to do these things for the next 2 or 3 months. Or would you still try to find a way to like incorporate those things? Are you like hard line, or are you a little bit more balanced?
I mean, unless I'm trying to do something to make money, like if I have to go prep for a Mr. Olympia and I'm going to make $1 million, like you can still get single digit body fat and have some flexibility. Like,
So you'd have some flex.
it
You
would
wouldn't
just
be
mean
like
like
hard black or white.
my breakfast, lunch, and dinners, probably Monday through Friday, are probably going to be a little more structured. And then date night on Friday or Saturday, like there's still 100% there's still room for that, right? I mean,
Okay, so yeah.
Let me just give you an example. Let's say Friday night is date night and I go out and I have a beer, pizza, and dessert. Like, let's say that's a 2,200 calorie evening out. Okay, let's say I had a slightly smaller breakfast and lunch that day. Like, even that day, I'm maybe over by
They had 1,000 there.
600 to 700 calories that day.
Right.
Well, if during the
right.
week, like I just had, 150 calorie smaller breakfast and lunches Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like I've offset all of that. Right.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like you just have to have some level of thought process and intentionality behind the strategy you're using. And everybody's a little different, right? Now, some people like that
Right.
Friday may set off a chain reaction of like, oh, okay, well, no, since I did that Friday, mentally, like I ruined my week, so I might as well just ruin it Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
Like, so you have to be a little
Exactly.
bit, you have to have some level of
Know who
like
you are.
intelligence about who you are to know what works and what doesn't. Like, I know
Yeah,
for me,
for sure.
if I'm going out and like I'm on a stricter phase, like I probably can't have more than one drink if I want to have a drink. If I have two or three, like my food choices after that are just going to be a disaster. And I may wake up and have had 7,000 calories. Like, I just know like that's what happens, right? Other people aren't like that. So it's just kind of having some level of like emotional intelligence about yourself to know how you handle things.
How much of a role do you think the reward mentality plays in this? Right. One of the things that
All
we
of
see
it.
is Monday
I
through
think
Friday. Yeah, it's like,
I think it's all
right.
of it, right? And it's
Monday through Friday, I did awesome. Oh, I deserve this. I deserve this night out on Saturday or whatever. Like it's the reward for having done well Monday through Friday. But it's like the reward is supposed to be the end goal that you have in mind for trying to lose weight and diet in the first place, right? But we reward ourselves with these things that make us feel good on the weekends.
and here's what's interesting. A lot of the like reward dopamine stuff is the anticipation of how good something's going to be, not how good something actually is, right? Think about like why people like going to the casino and gambling. It's not actually like if you win $100 and you get the $100 bill in your hand. Let's say you win 10 grand at the casino, the 10 grand in your hand. That doesn't give
Potential
you
of winning.
as much like area under the curve dopamine as the week you spent thinking about going to the casino and the hours you spent gambling, pulling the slots to win that money. It's the same thing when you think about like planning for a weekend out or a night out or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like the anticipation, thinking about how good it's going to be is actually better than like the cumulative effect on your brain is generally better than the actual immediate piece. But that is a lot of how we kind of handle and process and like get through the days and weeks of our life, right? Is we look forward to something. We can
That's
restrict now because there's something better coming in the future. And like that's just how, if we didn't have that system, we would never do anything that had any delayed gratification.
for sure. But that's a really good point, because that is why people say, and sometimes they even say it tongue in cheek, but they're serious. Like, oh man, I think about food all day, or I'm thinking about my dinner. Like they think about food all day, and that's there. It's that anticipation. So that's a really good point. And man, it's yeah, I mean, you get into that. That's hard to break away from. When you use food as a reward, which a lot of us do, it's like, how do you, yeah, that's just a whole different ball of wax. But that,
But I
again,
think it's important
that's a good
to like,
point, because
yeah, I think it's important though to understand and acknowledge that using food as a reward is not bad.
yeah, it's just, but
Like,
it's that's where you have to come to know, again, who are you as a person? Like, are you someone that can handle that as the reward, or are you someone that would benefit from a different type of, reward for your behavior? Because like you said, if you're someone who, if a Friday night out is going to set off your entire weekend, then you got to be careful on that. So it's kind of comes back to knowing who you are.
yeah, and then I think it's once you acknowledge that, it's then how do you build the systems and the behaviors
Yes.
to not let that one thing become a lot of things.
Do you think, how important do you think it is when we talk about triggers? Do you think those are, to me, it's like, you might not even
Trigger
may
and
not
what
may,
like there's like the scientific trigger sense and then there's like the colloquial trigger sense. Like are you talking about like a true like behavioral trigger that we see of like Pavlov's dog of like, hey, you heard the bell, so you salivate? Or is it like the colloquial sense of like, oh, I had a bad day, so I'm going to do X, Y, Z?
well, so that's a good question. I'm not sure. So let me give you an example. One of the ideas on how to kind of overcome this, uh, using reward, let me back up. If somebody says that they have an issue with food, I'm not necessarily binge eating, but like, let's say someone knows that if I eat food, if I eat something super hyper palatable, it's going to set off a chain of events that is going to lead me down a path I don't want to go down on. And one of the ideas to avoid that is, okay, before you reach for that sleeve of Oreos that sets off that chain of events, was there a trigger that led you to reach for those Oreos, right? And so and then with the purpose of identifying what that trigger was. The reason I'm saying this now is because I don't know if there always is a trigger, right? Sometimes it's like built into you, like it's just what you do, like maybe it's just a habit or a routine. There wasn't any particular thing that you could point at and say that was the trigger that led to this event, therefore I need to replace that. After the trigger, I need to replace the action I normally go to with a different action, right? And so, but in order to get to a different action, recognizing your trigger is the recommendation. But again, that's why I'm saying, like, is there always what kind of, is that actually a trigger? Is there always a trigger, or is it sometimes it's just our habits? Does that make sense? Because I don't know that there always is a trigger. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, let's change the language and see if this makes more sense. Stimulus and response.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There are two ways in my mind to kind of deal with this situation of what you're describing. There is one, live a life in which there's no stimulus, or
that sounds awful,
or develop multiple responses to the same stimulus.
That's the one that we'd want. Yeah.
I think
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the reality is you've got to find ways to do both, right? It's sort of like, let's make an analogy. Let's say you are dealing with an anger issue, right? Like, remember the movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson?
I saw it a while ago, but yes.
Like, this is just kind of a crude example. Let's say you're dealing with like an anger issue, and you know that you need to develop different responses to things that make you upset, right? Now, there's also times where a response of anger is the correct response. Okay. Do you think it's easier to develop a variety of responses if you are occasionally exposed to a response that might elicit anger, or if you're exposed to it every single day, 10 times a day?
Occasionally.
Right? It's probably easier to like take a step back, examine your behavior, think through it, and develop better strategies to have a different response if it's less frequent, right? So let's take that example and say, okay, you want to change how you respond to a stressful week with how you unwind on a Friday. Okay? So let's say your typical behavior is on Fridays after work, Fridays you leave work at 4:00, because you get off an hour early, and you drive home your normal way, and on the way there's your favorite bar/pizza place that has happy hour, and happy hour ends at 5. So you always stop and you get a couple beers and you split a pizza with one of your friends, and then you walk across the street and you get ice cream, and then whatever, right? Okay. That's just like your normal behavior. Now, if you do that every Friday, right, you're kind of just continuing to ingrain the habit of every time I drive by here on a Friday, this is what I'm doing, right? Now, let's say the next week you stay until 5:00. So when you drive by, it's not happy hour anymore. And you're like, well, I don't really want to pay full price for all this stuff. So you've kind of reduced the amount of the stimulus you have. And so it's a little bit of, okay, now the next week when I go, I'm going to go at 4, but like, hey, I didn't do it last week. So maybe now when I'm there, it's like I can have one beer and one slice of pizza, and maybe we won't go to the ice cream shop across the street, because you've like created more space between the behavior, the stimulus, and the response. And so I think it's a little bit of both.
So this goes as a good illustration for the philosophy that you're kind of outlining, which is you don't have to be perfect. Just do a little bit better than you did last time, or do something different than it was before that gets you, whether it's 1% better, 50% better, whatever it might be. Perfection isn't the goal. It's just changing little things that will influence your circumstances.
Yeah, and it's also give yourself multiple ways to respond to the same stimulus. Right? I think a lot of times I have no neuroscience to back this up. This is just my own experience. So if there's any like psychologists or neuroscientists here who wants to tell me I'm crazy, that'd be great. But like if you're exposed to the same stimulus, the same environment, and you've only ever developed one response, the likelihood of you choosing the option that's better for your goals is 0. But now if you have 4 responses, 3 of them are more aligned with your goals than 1, you've just increased the likelihood that your brain's going to make the decision that aligns with your goal. So just develop like multiple responses.
And this goes back to environment shaping too, because that's really also what you're doing. When you're giving yourself multiple options, you're shaping your environment to be different as well.
Yeah, it's environment shaping, but it's also like it's much easier to make decisions ahead of time saying, I'm going to set myself up so I respond this way when I'm exposed to this stimulus, than just being exposed to the stimulus and then just hoping you have a different response, right? So it's like, go back to our example of, hey, let's say on Monday, you just make the decision, I'm not going to leave work on Friday until 5. Like that gives you a much different way to respond to the same situation and environment than if it's 4:00 on Friday and you're just driving home in the normal habits. So it's a little bit of like the planning ahead and the giving yourself a additional response ahead of time is incredibly helpful.
So the flexible approach that you're talking about, it does work, and it works for a while until it doesn't, right? And so the reason I'm saying this is it's interesting to me how, and you can draw a correlation between, like an analogy would be business. You can get to, let's say, 50,000 for your annual recurring revenue by maybe just winging a lot of things, and you get lucky and you get to 100,000. But then what it takes to get from 100,000 to a million, now you can't get away with as much, with you need more structure and more of a plan to get to 1 million. And then to get to 10 million, you need more structure and more of a plan and so as you try to improve, you got to be more and more disciplined, more refined, etc. Right. So in that same sense, people can get away with being flexible on the weekends and not need to be perfect. If you want to lose, let's say you lose 30 pounds doing this, and then your weight loss stalls. Well, now those drinks that you were estimating on the weekend that you weren't perfect about, now they'll start to matter more. Because if you want to lose the next 10 pounds, you got to get a little more specific. You got to get a little more precise with your intake. You got to start doing the things that you could get away with back then, but you can't anymore. Okay, now you lose those next 10 pounds. Okay, now I'm stalled again. Now I got to get even more and more precise. So that flexibility kind of does fade away the more you want to keep going and the more you want to accomplish.
Let me change the language a little bit, because I think what you're trying to say is a little bit different. Because when I think about flexibility in terms of like nutrition, it's the ability to eat the things that you want to eat that may not be like perfectly healthy, quote unquote. Like, to me, being flexible in your diet is like, hey, I want to go have ice cream, I want to go have pizza, I want to go have the wine, I want to go be able to eat with more freedom, right? So let me change the language from flexibility to intentionality, right? You can get nearly stage ready lean having a pizza, having a beer, having a glass of wine, going on a date night. Like, you can, but you have to be intentional about it, right? Your ability to just be like, I'm going to do whatever I want for 3 days this week is not flexibility. It's lack of purpose, right? Same thing with to make your business analogy is, it's less about discipline and more about like purpose and intentionality, right? Of like, hey, I could be really disciplined to just post a bunch of random stuff on the internet 7 days a week for 10 years, but that's not purpose and that's not intention. Like, why am I doing this? What is the strategy behind it? Is there a real purpose? Am I monitoring the outcomes closely? Am I making real adjustments? Like, you can be flexible, but it's more about intentionality, right? And that's a little bit about like the weekend thing, right? Is it comes down to, is there a purpose and an intention for those quote unquote more flexible days of your life?
Yeah. Yep. I think but again, I wanted to kind of highlight that because I think people can kind of get away with, can lose sight of that and say, well, it's all about flexibility. So I'm going to, just go do my best to estimate all the time. And then they end up wondering, why is it not working anymore? So I think, to your point, that's really, it comes down to having I guess having that purpose behind why are you taking it a little bit easier? Why are you doing the things you do? So yeah, I guess intentionality is a great word for that. What do we think, like, in terms of how to make, there's a lot of benefits to getting, let's just continue with that word, more intentional with your weekends. If you've got to be a little more consistent. It should be something that's sustainable. There's also that sort of
sustainable in what sense?
Well,
like, tell me more about what you mean by that.
Is what I'm doing on the weekends going to be something that I can do for the rest of my life, or is this a temporary thing?
But why does it have to be forever?
Well, and it doesn't. Yes, I know. I'm not saying it does. But I think what people are looking for oftentimes is not a temporary fix, but something that they can sustain long term.
Let me give you a different perspective. I feel like I'm being very argumentative today, but I'm just.
That's right. No, it's good. Yeah.
I think one of the traps we all fall into, especially with the kind of health, wellness, fitness, weight loss, nutrition, whatever we want to label this thing we do, is we assume everything has to be forever. Like, why not develop a strategy that works for you for the weekends for this season of your life? And then be open to the idea that that's going to change, right? Like, what worked for me when I was 22 and working 100 hours a week, my weekend strategy is different than what it is today. And so I think people just like understand that to make progress towards your goals, let's keep it focused on the weekends. Like, let's say you're trying to lose weight and get in great shape. You need to develop a strategy that works for you in this season of your life until this is no longer the season of your life. And then you need to come up with a new strategy. Right? Think about it like
that's it right there. Yes, exactly.
Think about it like investing. When you're 18 years old, you probably want to put all the money that you're making in equities, right? When you're 5 days from retirement, you don't want 100% of all the money that you have in your portfolio in your equities. It's just probably not the strategy to use, right? The risk tolerances are much different. The time frames are much different. The liquidity needs are much different. And the withdrawal rates are much different, right? Same thing with like your nutrition. When you're a 22-year-old single person who's living by yourself, your strategy for the weekend, maybe I'm not going to leave my apartment. I'm super focused on getting as Instagram lean as I can. I'm going to make all my meals. Like my weekends are going to be the exact same. I'm going to get up at the same time. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. Versus you're 45 years old. You have 5 kids who are all in sports. You just worked a 60-hour week because you're an accountant and like it was just tax season. That strategy, that 22-year-old is not going to work for this person, right? It's like, okay, what does my week look like versus what does my weekend look like? What is the strategy I have for the fact that I have to drive to 19 different soccer fields and deal with all this stuff, and I got to go grocery shopping, and I got to go to Costco, and I got to put my New Balances on and mow the lawn, and I got to fire the barbecue up? Like,
that sounds exactly like my weekends, by the way. All the soccer and all this other stuff.
If when you were 22, you said, this is my weekend strategy for forever.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Your life is going to either suck or your strategy is going to be terrible, or both.
So that's exactly. So I think you're exactly right, and that's what I mean when people say, "Here's my strategy while I'm losing the weight." What they really want is, after I've lost the weight, what's going to be my strategy to keep it off? Because if you do something temporarily for 3 months and you lose the weight, and then once that's over, you go back to your old habits, the weight's going to come right back on, and you're going to be back at square one eventually. So what they're really looking for is, how do I then keep it off? But again, you nailed it, because at that point, you're just going to need a different strategy. And it's not going to be the same as it was when you were dieting for those 2 to 3 months or whatever it was, but it will be a strategy. And you'll have to be, once again, intentional with what you're doing and your actions and behaviors. And that's also why we say, people that, when you've lost weight, you're going to have to work at it for the rest of your life to keep it off in some capacity. Some might have to work harder. It might be difficult for some. It might be easier for some. But either way, you're going to have some sort of plan or strategy in place to keep that off, right? So I think that's really the point that we needed to make there, and why I kind of talked about sustainability is, once I've gotten to where I want to be, how do I sustain that? So if I've got my weekends under control and I get good at that, like, is this how my weekends are always going to look? And I think your point is, no, it's not. But now you at least know that, hey, on my weekends, I'm going to have to have some sort of strategy, right? And that might look different after 5 years, might look different after 10 years, so on and so forth. But a strategy needs to be in place. So I think what you're really saying is, get good at understanding the strategy piece, and get good at implementing a strategy, and get good at being intentional with why you're doing things and purpose and all of that. So I was going to mention something too, and then I lost my train of thought with that. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. So let's we still have some time here, but let's dive into. Can we dive into the structure piece? I think that people have asked, and I've gotten this question before, and so I know that people are going to want to know this, but when it comes to actual structure, what practical tips do you have for people that you would suggest around that structure piece, right? And let's, instead of, I mean, we could make like, we could be vague, but like, do you have any specific examples that you personally employ or that you might recommend to people for actually building structure into their weekends, being intentional with that and purposeful, that they can, that they can actually apply to their weekends to make them more successful, to keep them on track and do as well as they did during the week. Because what I would suggest, and this is probably maybe similar to yours, it might be entirely different. In the same sense that we have a Monday through Friday schedule, Friday comes, write out your plan for Saturday. I'm going to get up, I'm going to do this. Here's what I'm going to have for lunch. Here's going to be my afternoon structure. And then here's what I'm doing in the evening. And then just stick to that. Like having a plan in advance is huge. It can be huge, as opposed to just, well, I'm just going to wing it today and try to do my best. Having a plan in place can be a huge game changer, right? So that's just one practical recommendation that I might make.
Yeah, I mean, I think another piece is communicate with the people in your life about what your plans are for weekends.
Good point. Good point.
Right.
Yep.
I think it's just because you have ideas of what you want your weekends to look like, you also have other people in your life that probably have plans too. And so communicate with them about how do you mesh your values and priorities with their values and priorities, and how they want to change their lives around that.
That's a great point.
I think that's a great place to start.
Do you find that I think it's also the in that same sense, you would set boundaries for when you're working, and let's say Marissa's home, right? Like she knows that and you're probably like, hey honey, here's, I'm working from here to here, and I can help you with XYZ from here to here, but like during this time, like here are the things I got to do. And she understands that Brad's working. She understands what your schedule looks like, and she respects that. So in the same sense, it's having that support and those people in your life understand your goals, what you're trying to do, what your structure is, so that they don't, impede on that, and that they respect what you're trying to do. And you come together and it works, as opposed to them coming to you and say, hey, you want to go out for dinner, right? Like, oh, I really wanted us to go out for dinner. Why are you, why are you eating like this? Let's go out to dinner, right? That's much different than if you communicate to them ahead of time that, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it. Just need your understanding and your support.
Yeah, and I think this is where like the art of living comes into play, right? Is obviously placing your own health and wellness high up on your priority list is one of the best ways you can be the best version of yourself. But you've got to find ways to do it within the context of the rest of your life and everybody else that matters and is in your circle, right? And it's a little bit of how do you get everybody on the same page of like what that looks like. And sometimes this means you just have to have discussions about it. Like if you're in a very strict phase of your journey, which we all go through that, there's periods where we have to be more strict than others. Communicate those things with the people in your life. If there's a family event, if there's a barbecue, if you have to travel, if you have to do all these things, like just letting people know, like, hey, I know we're going to go out to dinner this weekend. We're celebrating it's your birthday.
Right.
Like, are there a few restaurants that you want to look at? Can I look at the menu ahead of time and see if there's something that fits with me so we can go and I can enjoy myself? Hey, we're going to the kids' softball tournaments this weekend and we're going to be gone all day. Are you guys okay if we all as a family spend some time on Friday preparing some meals ahead of time that we can take in a cooler instead of just like driving to the drive-through? Like those are all conversations that you can totally have.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is just my own curiosity, but when you're at when you're in Sandpoint on the weekends, or I'm sure you up there Friday, Saturday, Sundays, probably spend a lot of your weekends there, but do you guys try to structure your weekends very similarly there as you would at home, like when you're, in Spokane? Like,
Um,
do they look mostly the same in terms of like? Obviously, I know like you guys do different things while you're in different places, but like structurally, like overall, is it relatively the same for you? Like you guys
no,
eat
it's
at home, you.
yeah. I mean, it's my life is relatively simple. Like in terms of that stuff, like we probably go for more walks when we're up there because the dogs can run around.
Yeah,
We probably eat at home more because like town's like 30 minutes away, so we just prepare
yeah,
more of our meals. We probably eat less when we're up there just because we're like doing other stuff.
yeah,
We'll
right,
eat dinner later up there. Like it's just just things change.
yeah, yeah. Um, do you have a wakeboard?
I think my wife has one from when she was a kid that's like
Oh,
in the
so
basement
yeah,
somewhere.
okay. Dang, okay.
No. Dude,
Okay. Just
wakeboarding as a full grown adult, no.
it's what do you mean? It's so much fun.
Dude,
I mean, it's not
if,
fun wiping out, but it's
if you
overall it's
catch an
fun.
edge on a wakeboard, it's like
I
instant
know.
concussion.
Oh, I know.
Like
That's
I
why,
would
like,
much rather like wake surfing is way more fun. It's slow. When you fall, it's like you just like end up sinking into the water. It's way more fun. We don't have a wake surf boat because I just don't want to spend that kind of money on a boat. That's
well,
insane. But like
just go really
we
fast on your pontoon.
you can't when you go slow when you wake surf
Well, why not go fast?
because then you can't surf.
Okay, whatever.
That's like saying, why don't you run at 1 mile an hour? It's like that's called
Well, wait,
walking.
maybe I'm thinking. Hold on. Well, maybe I'm thinking of. Oh, why was I thinking? Okay, I was thinking that I don't know why I pictured this. When you said wake surfing, I'm thinking like using your bare feet. I don't know why I thought that. Wake
That's
surfing, you're talking
barefoot
about there's
water
like
skiing. That's
well, yeah, 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 right. But you're so wake surfing is like literally without the like you're not your feet aren't strapped in, right? Like you're actually just on a surfboard basically.
Yeah, you're on a small surfboard. You're in a
Okay.
specific boat that has a big wave.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
those boats are
Gotcha.
wildly expensive.
I don't know how the hell we got to this conversation, but we should probably get back on track. Um, did we? Oh yeah, I see we got a comment here. Oh, it's about nicotine. Okay, I got you. Yeah, Julie, if you're still watching, I'd be curious to hear that as well. So, is there? I guess is there anything else that you? Let me quick give a summary just so people we can kind of recap where we're at and the things that we've talked about for people in terms of managing your weekends. We've talked about building structure. We've talked about having a plan. So like plan the things that you're going to indulge in, pick your moments, not the whole weekend. Practice food flexibility. What we mean by that is you can still eat the things that you normally enjoy. It doesn't have to be rigid. Doesn't have to you don't have to exclude anything. Track as best you can. You can estimate if you're going to go out and you know that you've been really good all week and you're under your calories. You can totally fit something in Friday night, even if you're not specific with the actual calorie intake on that. Then you can also we've talked about restructuring your environment, using non-food rewards for your behaviors, and then planning ahead, right? So you just mentioned, if you're going to go away on the weekend, let's say, prepping your weekend food on a Friday night, whether maybe it's sandwiches, you're just planning simple meals ahead of time. Maybe you grocery shop ahead of time to get those things, but it's really about having some sort of plan in place for what you're doing and being intentional. So that's what we've talked about so far. I guess is there anything else that you'd add or anything you would want to talk about that you think might be helpful for people? I mean, I think just not making sure people also understand that they don't have to be perfect and you're not supposed to be. It's just trying to improve on a little bit each time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if we kind of go back to one of the like core principles of what we talked about here, it's just having a level of purpose and intentionality around the different parts of your life.
Mhm.
And weekends are definitely a big part of that. Weekends, vacations, etc. And a
Mhm.
lot of it becomes like there's almost no wrong way to do it if there's intention and purpose behind it.
Mhm.
Like we have like vacations are a good example. We have clients and there's been periods of my life where it's like when I'm on vacation, I'm still tracking everything. I'm still super diligent. I'm eating. I'm really focused on my total calories, all those things. Like I'm really dialed in. And then there's periods of my life, and there's even clients we recommended to like just go let vacation be vacation. Like you're not going to do that much damage in a week. Like it's fine, do whatever. And so it really comes down to making sure you have a plan of what you're going to do and having purpose and intention. And if you do that, there's a lot of different ways that you can slice that pie.
When's your next vacay?
Next February,
Okay. Going to Mexico again?
we are, yes.
Same resort?
Yep.
I got to figure out where we want to go next year. I think wife wants to do Mexico with the kids again too, but I don't know if we're going to go to Puerto Vallarta or we did look at Cabo, and I think I even saw the same resort that you stayed at. I'll have to ask you offline sometime if that's the one, but it looked pretty nice. But yeah, we got to figure out where. And if we and when I go, I will not be tracking. I will not be. I will be enjoying myself. Just say that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not
Well,
really a huge like vacation person. Like I really enjoy my day-to-day life, so like
your
to
structure,
me
yeah.
vacation's like not really a big escape, but
Huh.
it's just it's sometimes nice like the place that we go, it's we just get to go, we hang out for a week. You're kind of
And what
just
do you?
I enjoy more just like being disconnected from the world and like just being able to spend
That's
time with my wife one on one is really what it's more about than like, just the
that's
distraction
us.
of daily life of like, hey, you really
Yeah.
get to like put your phones down for a week and just go do that.
That's what I was going to ask is like what specifically do you enjoy? But that's I agree. That's why I do it with my
Yeah.
wife, my kids, and travel is take as many. Well, you only get 2 years where your son gets to fly free. Once they hit two, then you got to pay for a seat for them. So take them on vacay as much as you can between now and then. Um,
Yep.
it's not cheap to take a family of 6 people anywhere. I'll just say that. Like, oh gosh, none of my
No.
kids get to fly for free anymore. So I think we've kind of wrapped up everything. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to add, but I hope this episode was helpful for people. And I will also say, if you continue to have issues on the weekend, and if you're someone who comes into the Facebook group and you're or wherever, and you're like, man, I got to start over again on Monday, a coach can help. I'm just going to say that right now because that is one of the biggest reasons people hire a coach to help with everything that we're talking about. And this kind of stuff needs practice, it needs guidance, it needs implementation. So having someone that can help you actually do all this stuff, give you feedback, give you practical tips on how to incorporate these things into your life so that you are more consistent Monday through Sunday. Maybe consider getting a coach. I really think that more people would benefit than they realize. Even if you don't really know what a coach does, there's a real good chance we can help you with whatever that might be. So, and you're taking clients right now, right, Brad? Like you've got your intake on, so you can take what? How many you got room for? 50?
I am not taking any clients at the moment.
Michelle Grace says such a great discussion. Thanks. Yes.
You,
So thank you for watching, Michelle. For real, appreciate the shout out, and I'm glad you found it helpful. What were you gonna say, Brad?
I was to say it is crazy to think about like at one point how many clients I was working with on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, what was your highest? In the hundreds, wasn't it?
I
Like,
think the
what's a
highest like active coaching roster I had that required weekly work was like just for me was like 350.
what?
Yeah.
That's wild.
It
Holy
was
cow, dude.
it was crazy. I mean, it was. I gotta see if I don't know if I still have this picture. I gotta find it. If I can find it.
I did not know you had that many. I thought
Uh,
somewhere between 100 and 200, but 350? Damn.
I don't know if I still have this picture, but my wife has a picture of me. I think it's on her phone.
While
I
you're
was
looking that up,
I was sitting on the couch
Go ahead.
with my laptop, and it was like 11 p.m. at night, and I was like getting back to clients. And this was when my wife was working nights, and so she was like up. She was just on that sleep schedule, and she was like folding towels, and I was just sitting there so focused on working, and she just like threw a bunch of towels on my head, and I didn't even like take a moment to take the towel off my head. I just kept working, so I just got a picture of me.
Do you have that?
I think it's on her phone. I can't find it.
Dang.
It's so old. This is from like 2017, 2016. Yeah. No, so at one point it was I had a few of my own like private clients still from like a long time ago. And then the other coaching company that I owned and built, I had like 100 and some odd from there. And then I was doing some contract coaching for a company that was doing work with like military operators. And so I was doing a lot of the work for them to kind of prepare them for deployments and stuff. So I had like another couple hundred there. And then I had probably about 40, 50 athletes that I was doing some other contract work with. So I like across a bunch of different stuff, I had like 350 on my panel at one point.
You know what we're going to do for next week's episode? We're going to do when you worked for the FBI.
I can't
you're going
talk
to tell
about
us all
that,
the
actually.
we're going to you're going to tell us all the trade secrets of when Brad was an FBI guy.
I cannot talk about it. I don't want them coming after me. I will. Here's what I can tell you. I had a wallet of Bitcoin that it was being used for a lot
I remember
of work
you saying that.
doing.
Yeah,
I would be. I would be very wealthy if I had not like scraped and cleaned everything off of the work laptop that I had.
Did you ever hear about that guy in Germany who had like millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and but he couldn't remember his password to get into it, and you only get 10. Now he's down to 2, and he's basically like, I don't know what it is, and I'm not gonna ever get that money. Like, imagine being locked out. You have 2 guesses left before it's gone forever, and you just have given up.
There was
so much.
There was a Big Bang Theory episode about a Bitcoin on like a USB drive that they had in their apartment that they couldn't find. And this was back in like when Bitcoin was not worth $100,000. Let me see what that came out. That came out in 2017. So it was maybe worth like 20, 30,000 at the time. But yeah.
That's crazy. We did get, Julie replied, she said, I was never actually diagnosed with long COVID, but from the very little I looked into it, can I post a link here? I don't have an issue with that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I will say I think it helped with my energy and brain fog that I had from an illness. I never tested, so can't say what I did or didn't have. But yeah, that's
you maybe had the general malaise that occurred between 2020 and 2021 when we just all never left our house.
Yeah, that's it was a wild time that we lived through.
You know, we have like seasonal affective disorder where it's like when it's crappy weather outside.
Yes.
I think we all just had like indoor depression is what I called it.
For sure. All right. Well, yeah, Julie, post up that link or you can email us. You can email brad.dieter@macrosinc.net or Dylan, DYLEN, @macrosinc.net. But otherwise, post it here. But I think that's all I got, man. So before I go, I just want to show the new Lamborghini that my wife got me again. Every time she sees like a Lamborghini somewhere, she buys me, like, apparently to decorate my office. I have like 20 Lamborghinis in here.
You know why she does that, right?
Because she's never going to get me an actual Lamborghini.
Because she knows that if you have enough toys of it, you won't ever actually buy the real one. So then she doesn't have to deal with that.
True. Yeah, that's actually probably her strategy. It's funny because like I have this display of like the smaller Lamborghinis to my left, and my kids always end up playing with them. So like they have like cracked windshields and stuff. And just, whatever, I don't care at this point. So
See, that's a much cheaper problem to fix than the actual one.
for sure. One more comment from Julie. Neuroscientist Jana Moen, PhD. I totally had that stay at home. Oh, she said, "Oh, I totally had that stay at home thing, but I didn't try the patches until just a few months ago." So there you go. That is interesting. Jana Moen, neuroscientist. So there you go, Brad. If you want to look her up.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Well,
We're gonna duck
I'm
out of here.
go, speaking of caffeine, I'm gonna go get some more coffee.
And I am hungrier than you know what, so I'm gonna go eat. And my kids are gonna be yelling at me, and they're gonna be very happy that we're gonna eat. So we're out of here. Till next time, guys. Goodbye.